Hi there, these comments are for Cy, and I am Michael Buckoff, the founder, owner, and the materials writer for all of your lessons at the TOEFL online course, a 7-step system to pass the TOEFL IBT. And you just sent me an email earlier today, and you're asking some questions about word choice, and particularly, you're asking me questions about modals. Now, before I answer your question, let me give you some basic tips. Really, the best way to have better control of your language use is to read a lot and spend time listening to authentic listening material. So here's my 2 suggestions. Number 1, spend about 45 to 60 minutes every day reading news, maybe newspapers, magazines, maybe longer books. That's very important, and pay attention to the words, the punctuation, the subject-verb agreement. All of those things. Pay close attention to how the writer expresses the different ideas. That helps you have a much better control over language. Secondly, spend about the same amount of time each day practicing listening materials. You can listen to news programs, documentary programs, history, and even science programs. That's going to give you some high-level vocabulary that will give you appropriate grammar that will help you at the university level. So that would be 2 of my suggestions. And also, my online TOEFL course, I think it'd be a great opportunity for you to start posting your speaking and your writing practice test and give me a chance to give you some feedback, and I will evaluate your speaking and writing in terms of your language use. I'll pay attention to the vocabulary and the grammar you're using. I'll pay attention to how you develop and organize your ideas. I'll also pay close attention to your intelligibility or your pronunciation of American English. So those are some things I can do if you become one of my students. So just keep those things in mind. Alright, now, if you have a grammar book, for example, the Azar grammar book called Understanding and Using English Grammar, you want to go to the area called modals. But any grammar book will have some discussion of modals. And I got to warn you right now, modals are they're pretty complicated, and there are dozens and dozens of rules surrounding the use of modals. And in this video, I am not in any way trying to cover all of the rules associated with these words. But let's take a look at each of the words you have questions about. So you're looking at the words can and could first of all. Okay, so traditionally we use can and could to talk about ability, but sometimes we'll differentiate what's called the time frames. Typically, with could, we'll talk about ability in the past tense, and with can, we'll talk about ability in the present tense. So let me give you some examples. If I said, I might say, in this case, I might say, yesterday I knew I could not finish my homework. So in this case, I'm using the word could because in the main part of the sentence I say I knew, and then I'm using what's called a noun clause. I knew that I could not finish my homework. Now watch what happens when I use the word today. So once I say today, of course everything's going to change to present. So today I know that I cannot finish my homework. So that would be one way to differentiate between can and could. Typically we use could when we refer to ability in the past tense. We use can when we refer to ability in the present tense. Alright, let's go to your next group of words. You have the word shall and should. I wouldn't pair those together, to be honest with you. If I paired them together, I would pair the words shall and will together, not shall and will and should. So in British English, this is more of, they use shall more in British English than we do in American English. I think it's typical to say something like this. So we talk about shall when we're using what's called future tense, and typically in British English they'll use it with the first person singular pronoun. For example, today I shall go to the movie. In British English they might say today we will go to a movie, right? So let's take a look at this. So you might say today we will go, you will go, they will go, but sometimes in the first person singular in British English they will use the word shall. So I look at the word shall and will as indicating some event which is happening beyond the present tense or beyond the present point of reference. Now in American English the word shall is not used very often. It's considered very formal, and you probably won't hear or see that very often in American culture. Alright, now let's go to the word should. Should is, it's when you're talking about obligation, a duty maybe, something that you could have or you should have done or you should do, right? So let me give you an example. I might say, so let's say that I leave the dishes in the sink, then my wife says to me, you should not leave your dishes in the sink, right? I'm using this as a direct quote. So my wife said, you should not leave your dishes in the sink. She's talking about something that maybe an obligation or duty that I'm not doing in the present time. Now it's also possible let's say we're talking, actually I'm not going to get too complicated in this video. Let's just leave it at that. So should typically is used to talk about obligation or duty. That's the most common usage you will find with that. And like I said before, I wouldn't pair should and shall together. I would put shall with will to indicate some event in the future time frame. Alright, let's take a look at may and might. Now there's a similarity, I think, with can and could and may and might. Again, may traditionally is used to talk about maybe things in the present tense versus might will talk about something in the past tense. I might say this, I may go to the movies. Notice in this case, so if I say I may go to the movies, I'm talking about a present possible situation. Now if I say I might have gone to the movies, I'm talking about a past impossible situation. Notice the difference in meaning. I might have gone to the movies, that means that I did not go. So I might have gone to the movies, but I was too busy. So again, if you want to pair up may and might, you look at may typically to talk about a possible situation in the present tense. If you have might, you might be talking about a past impossible type situation. So may typically for present tense, might is typically for past tense. Okay, let's take a look at the last one. You have I, me, and myself. Now we're getting into what's called subject, object, and reflexive pronouns. Again, if you read a lot, if you spend a lot of time listening to English, even songs and things, I mean, you will really begin to understand more about these. So I is used in a subject position. I might say John and I are going to the store. In this case, we can't say me because we're using I as a subject. But what if I said this? Michael is going to the store with John and me. Now in this case we have to use the word me because John comes after a preposition and it means John is an object, so me is an object, so then you have to use an object pronoun there. Now the last one is the reflexive pronoun. I might say this. In this case, I see myself in the mirror every morning when I get ready for work. So this is probably, I think, if you listen to a lot of conversational English, a lot of native speakers are not going to be using these pronouns correctly, but this is the correct usage here. Using the word myself, which is the same as I see myself in the mirror every morning when I get ready for work. Alright, so I think we're good. So let me just recap what I said in the video. So I took a look at the different words, I paired them together as can and could, I put shall and will together, I explained should separately to denote obligation, I talked about may and might, and then I got into the subject, object, and reflexive pronouns. And that's it. Now one thing you might be interested in is in my website, it's interesting you brought up this question, but I have a writing and a speaking lesson that covers these things. It gets into in one of the lessons, where is I'm gonna have you take a quick snapshot of this. Here it is right here. It's called Determiners and Pronouns. So I have the list, everything that you've asked me here. I have the list of subject pronouns, I have the list of object pronouns, possessive pronouns, reflexive pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, possessive determiners, and then demonstrative determiners, and you can see how each of the words are categorized according to the different usages there. Also what you can do is, if you're still not sure, you can take the word myself and Google it, and you can put myself and put how to use myself in a sentence, and you will find some sample sentences through Google that will show you exactly that. So it's good to see the grammar in context, which means see it in a reading passage, maybe in a newspaper article or a story of some sort. And that's going to help reinforce more of how to use those words as opposed to just trying to remember all the rules. Because remember, native speakers who speak proficiently and they write proficiently, they don't know why they do what they do all the time. That is to say, they don't know all the rules surrounding the usage of the words that they speak or write. Nevertheless, they can still use them, right? Because they have the experience, the exposure to the language, which allows them to do that. Alright, I think that's it. So anyway, thank you for your questions. I can't remember, to be honest with you, if you're one of my students or not. If you're not one of my students, I would love to have you as one of my online students in my 7-step system to pass the TOEFL IBT. I have a great course. I have over 630 lessons to help you with your vocabulary, your pronunciation, your grammar, your reading, your listening, your writing, and your speaking areas. And as you can see, my course is actually affordable. It's actually not that expensive, and you will be able to improve your academic English language proficiency. Of course, if you don't work hard, you're not going to make any improvements at all. But if you're pretty motivated, and if you make good use of the materials at my website and you follow my suggestions, you will be able to improve a lot. Alright, thank you very much. Happy holidays and a happy Merry Christmas to you.